Dan Swede with Hydrochem Systems. This is going to be our training video for all the employees here at Hydrochem Systems. Alright, well typically we've got a Hydrotech SCU 3509 VG hot water machine that's powering the system here. Basic initial features are the 31 horsepower 896 cc Vanguard twin cylinder engine, belt drive pump, PSI Series 2021 general pump, and a 3,000 watt onboard generator, 110 volt. They're rated between 110 and 115 on that, but it's a 3,000 watt generator. The reason we went with this on this wheelie bin system is the generator itself is going to power the electricity for our wastewater recycling system on here. So we don't need to run a separate pump or generator on it, but it does self-contain within the unit itself. We've got more than enough horsepower when it comes to the power plant on that. The unit is a full stainless steel frame, stainless steel burner housing, and control panels, and everything on it is stainless steel. It's pretty much their upgraded version on it. Typically, when it comes to your very, very basic knowledge of the engine and all, it's only had 2 quarts of oil in the engine, so service and maintenance is critical when it comes to the unit because we're down to only 2 quarts of oil. We do recommend synthetic oil. Need more? Wow.
More louder. Yep.
Alright, so basically it's 2 quarts of engine oil, normally 10W30. It can vary based on the climate they're in when it comes to viscosity. It does have an oil filter, pressure fed system, so pretty much oil, like I said, is critical when you're only running 2 quarts of oil. One of the other reasons why that is, it's an air-cooled engine, which runs normally at least 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not like your water-cooled engine on your vehicle, so it definitely runs hotter. And depends on the climate. If it's in Florida, Arizona, it's even going to get worse. So typically, you want to do your maintenance. I normally recommend every 50-hour oil change, considering you can get from here to South Florida and back in 50 hours or less. It's a long enough trip or time for something with only 2 quarts of oil in there. It's rated up to 100 hours of runtime on that when it comes to the oil. Back on the engine, you do have an air filter. Normally it's once a year, twice a year on the air filter change on that for maintenance. You do have an inline fuel filter, same thing with that. Basically every service, the filter should be changed. You got a quick drain hose on here for the engine. It makes it a little easier to operate and run that. The pump itself actually now has a quick drain also on it. The pump uses normally a 30 weight hydraulic oil or pump oil on that, and that also should be maintained. They say up to 300 to 500 hours. I still like going overboard on that to keep it between 100 and 300 hours on that. It is a belt-driven pump, belt-driven generator, so anytime there's issues with low pressure, low voltage, I mean, to keep it simple, technique is to look for the belts, look at, start from that point and move your way out. They got split belt guards, so it's easy to do your belt changes within reason. They have improved the machine by putting these guide rails on here. The big upgrade, so it actually keeps the pump rail and pump very straight when it comes to the pulley alignment. Most of the other ones just kind of float on there, and you got to kind of use pry bars and figure out how to really get it down, or draw bolts that help you with that. The electric start engine, so there is some features on that before you ever start the pressure washer, because this is a positive displacement pump. If I turn the pump, it's going to build up pressure and back pressure, and a starter is not going to actually pump the pump. So at that stage, what you want to make sure you do is release the pressure one way or another on that. So we actually have, in this case, I put a high pressure ball valve on the end of the high pressure hose. These are incorrectly coupled, so that's why it looks like a massive amount of material on here. So when it's done properly, it's more streamlined and all that, so it won't look like this. And also on the wheelie bin, we actually have what we call a bypass valve here. It's a ball valve that allows the water to release the pressure and just dump back to the tank. What's nice about that, the machine could be running, just say it's going stop to stop like in a typical wheelie bin through a whole associated community where you got it all. They could actually leave the machine run, open the bypass valve here, There's no pressure on the pump or motor at that point, and they can actually go from stop to stop without worrying about what they call heat of bypass. Is when a positive displacement pump, the water has to go somewhere. So if you shut the gun off, the job of the unloader is to re-divert that water, normally either back to the pump on a small portable unit, or in this case back to the water tank. So it circulates that water and prevents the heat of bypass from building up. Typically a normal power washer could overheat in a matter of 4 minutes. Literally a cold water pressure washer here in a winter, or 60-degree water comment, it could actually boil within 4 to 5 minutes max in the life before you damage your pump. And this way, that's why we actually have the coil bypass, or a bypass line going from the pressure washer back to the tank. And also I incorporated the bypass here just so you'd have a way to release the pressure on that. And it's also a nice way to start the engine, because without having the pressure buildup, say this did not have the extra hose and hose reel on here for the commercial wash, this is that extra gun. Instead of them having to drag this gun to the front of the trailer to hold the gun open to crank it over, they just use the bypass underneath it. The other slight advantage with the thought pattern on this, if it was wintertime and it was kind of cold out, you can actually circulate warm water back to the tank. You know, you want to make sure that you don't go over 100 degrees, 110 degrees back to the tank, but it actually can circulate some hot water back to the tank while you're going between jobs and stuff. I've had guys that will come from Florida and go up north here and do ice dam removal, or you know, on roofs in different areas or culverts, and that's what they did. They had like a warm bypass that would actually, they would just take the bulb out and put it back in their tank and leave it circulating under 100-degree temp, and they could stay out all day. They would leave the machine running and still be able to work in the cold. I just took that to a more fixed position to have that here as an option. But mainly it is to release the pressure on the spark. Going back to the machine, and this is your pressure regulator here on this unit. It's spring-loaded, and basically anytime you deadhead the pump or any other line, the valve opens up another port, and that's where the bypass line will actually return back to the tank. So this is the lifeblood of the power washer. If somebody would just hand crank this on down in the shop here, because they got an open gun pressure, say you got the wrong nozzle or worn nozzle, and say, wow, this should be 3,500 PSI, I'm only at 3,000, and they just keep going and going and going, they could actually let the gun go and have over 20,000 pounds of pressure built up and blow the head right off the pump, or the valve out the pump head. I actually had, not the squirrel, but a little 5 horsepower that actually had the motor in the gun. It was called a dump gun. And I had walked by the service tech, and I said, I saw something that looked weird, and it didn't have the unloader on there. They just, you know, did it at the gun. Well, we used our test guns and equipment, and that little 5 horse Tecumseh, the minute you shut the gun off, blew a 5,000 pound rated hose. It was 4-to-1 burst at the time, so it exceeded 20,000 pounds of pressure, blew 2 needles off the test gauges, and blew the back of the gun out. And they were very lucky, because that utilization valve on the back of the gun, if that would have been the first thing that came out, could have been a bullet. And so that actually is the kind of power and pressure that can have. And as a matter of fact, even on a pump head, another situation where the head expanded so much, the brass head, which you wouldn't think would be able to block a brass that thick, was so big that I looked in and I thought, wow, the threads are still there. I'm thinking, great, I didn't blow up a pump. This is one of my rental machines that had a cap pump on it, and the head's like $400. So I went to go get a new valve cap. When I put it in to screw it down, it fell in the hole. It actually blew open so much expansion. I was thinking, oh my God, there is so much pressure behind it, not to take it for granted. So when you're adjusting the units for setting pressure, I always look at the bypass pressure more than I look at the open pressure. If my bypass is at 4,500 and I'm at 2,000, I don't give a crap. I'm stopping, you know, within a 5 or 10% range on there to get me what I want. And it could be just you got the wrong nozzle in the gun, some other issue, but that's a real important part. Always you look at the bypass pressure. And that's why it's hard to just sell an unloader to a customer and assume that they're going to understand how to set this up. And it could be 1 or 2 turns to make 1,000 PSI or more different. So basically that's a huge caution when servicing the unit. This system, one thing I love about Hydrotech and most of the legitimate manufacture the pressure washer, they have a lot of redundant safety devices on here. Right now, with heat, I have a great video on my YouTube channel that showed the steam explosion, which is actually worse than a pressure explosion when it comes to that. Hydrotech actually staged a steam explosion. They had this little electric unit like we have in the shop, the little stainless steel model. I think it was rated at 1500 PSI with an older model, and they allowed that unit to superheat, meaning they had water in the gun and hose, and they just let the burner run. And typically, it hit 14,000 PSI of steam pressure without the pump being involved with the equation. The machine actually blew completely up and flipped over. All this entire burner hub and all the things went flying. The Beckett burner that was on the end of the unit blew off it. It's a cool, I should have brought a picture of that down here to show you the dangers of a steam explosion. And so what they did is they eliminated all the redundant safety devices. What they have for those redundant safety devices, first one is the thermostat, which is also known as a high limit switch. It's designed to really run up to 200, 225 degrees or whatever it may be, rated for up to 250. And that is one safety device in itself, being a high limit switch. On that, or some are just a fixed temperature that kicks on and off the burner and it's non-adjustable. So your thermostat on this case normally runs and shuts down the fuel solenoid. So this, say something went wrong and then the redundant safety devices started kicking in, this is eliminating your fuel to the burner assembly, the diesel fuel. So if you're on the same page, this is actually have a diesel fired burner and a gasoline engine, is why we have different tanks on it. The black tank is the gas tank, the white tank is actually the diesel fuel tank, and you can use kerosene on the same point. So now you have the main thermostat control switch. You have a flow switch here that actually will kick on and off the burner based on the flow of water. So here you can even have the machine under pressure. Like this machine, if you shut the gun off, will stay at 3,500, 4,000 PSI in the line, even if you walk away, so the machine's running. So if it only had a pressure switch, it would think you needed it. You know, the burner would be on. So your flow switch here, kind of like a magnetic flow switch, that's where the one redundant safety device is. So without water flowing, no heat. You have a pressure switch. It's a new model, it's somewhere around here, but there's a pressure switch, it's a micro switch, that also is the redundant safety device. So now we got no pressure, no heat, no flow, no heat. Too much heat, it's going to cut off with the thermostat control. And on top of that, they run a, here, looks like a huge, like 2.5 inch or inch hose barb on here. This is actually a steam burst relief valve. This is rated, I think 8,000 PSI or something, 6,000 to 8,000 PSI on the steam burst. It's actually a burst disc. So if that blows out, it just blows the disc out. It's not, you know, you can rebuild it, but no one's going to go any further with that high, you know, the steam burst relief valve, or steam diaphragm too, they call it. What will happen that could cause that is a couple things. If you do have a problem with your burner and you're superheating it and you got that steam pressure, it's doing a job, it blows off. On the same token, say we're doing what I said earlier, you go house to house with maybe the machine running and the heat on. On occasion, there's guys that will actually follow guys through communities on sidewalks or whatever. So the guy they're cleaning with a 4-foot surface cleaner, and we shouldn't do that. And the guy driving the truck alongside, they're just going as they go down, keeping the hose short. It's easier to do. Well, if the water in the supply tank is a little bit too low, and they kind of pull forward and they get a little bit of air going in there, and it kind of pushes through, but it doesn't like completely shut everything down, then you might get this little steam burst because of the less water in there, and it could actually do a steam explosion. So what I recommend, and we're going to put a spare parts kit together for all these guys, I've already sent them out. By having an additional steam burst relief valve, you're able to actually tell the customer, go ahead and reinstall the new burst valve, run it. If it blows off again, shut it down, take it to a service center. So I have had that happen where it just popped off and never had another problem, and it wasn't really a big issue. But being that Hydrotech was actually owner, you know, the owner owned the business at the time. He wanted to eliminate all the liability. So I love the fact that he has so many safety devices on here. Some guys, like, I won't brand it right now since we're on video, will go the cheap route and maybe only have a flow switch or a pressure switch. They want to keep the least amount of dollar in the machine to drop the price. And that's just a safety hazard to the equipment and anybody operating it. So by far, that's why I'm so confident that these are one of the best machines on the planet. Now the thermostat actually had the probe in the back here, going back to the thermostat, that meters the temperature coming out of the pressure washer, and that's where it's picking up the temperature. It's just a little brass probe in there. And so that actually ties in the back, monitoring the discharge heat on this. This is also a dual operator machine, so you actually have two outlets. So this can run dual gun or one gun, and a regulator will control that. So just by your selection of nozzles determines if you get 4.5 gallons out or 9 gallon, or running two guys off at the same time. What's nice is with two 4.5 gallon tips, you're not getting a big surge to each one every time you just run one at a time. This is well balanced, so you're just acting as if you have two gun operation, which is really like weed whacking, I tell my clients, because it's more like if you got chewing gum, then use two guys to heat and pop the gum. But if you're going to surface clean, two surface cleaner runs actually slower than one at full flow. When you double your flow, you triple your speed. So having two guys, unless you're getting $100 an hour for each guy, it's stupid. You just run the full flow, full power. And give you an idea on performance, I've got videos of this machine in action in Florida where we did a 1,500 square foot paver driveway, 30 foot wide by 50 foot long, in 7 minutes. Traditionally, you're talking maybe 6 or 7 hours, done in minutes now. So we have the right package for clients. That's why we see $53,000 hot water pressure washers going out of here. It's not your normal Home Depot one. Sorry.
Let's get back on track.
Okay. And on top of that, you have pressure relief valves. There's normally two of them on here. So on the pressure relief, it's a spring-loaded little check valve or valve on there. So you normally have one on the pressure side and then one on the discharge or in the burner area. Now on occasion, the spring can get loose and sometimes they'll pop off and leak. You can maybe adjust them slightly after a year or so, but normally that's an inexpensive replacement part. So you also have these extra down the line high pressure top off relief valves on there. The electric start engine, so you do have a 12 volt battery. We always recommend like 1,000 co-crank and amp, larger battery, just to make sure you got ample voltage and not starving that. You do have an auxiliary plug on the back of the panel, so you're able to actually connect lights, or in this case our wastewater recycling system. This recycling system, the vacuum runs off 110 volt and the transfer pump is 12 volt. That's why they don't have to go with such an oversized generator. So basically when tying these in, you tie them both together and you're in good shape. You have some breakers, 15 amp breakers, so if there's some issues you can pop the breaker. The one thing that happens often is on a wheelie bin here, if they forgot to turn the vacuum recycling system on and that tank gets really full, it's kind of harder to pull all that head pressure with a vacuum if you've got a full tank. And what will happen is they normally will pop the ground fault circuit interrupter, which is back here. If this ground fault circuit interrupter pops, there's a red light that will come on to indicate that that's popped. So they got to reset it until the light goes off and then the vacuum should kick back on. But overall, this is a little easier. They used to have a switch, an auxiliary switch on this. The new model is more of an option now. So this has always got power, so the main thing they would do when it comes to that, when we get to the recycling system, is make sure that is on before they ever start working. The other important aspect on the machine, if you see here, there is no throttle linkage or throttle. Because you have a generator, to get the proper voltage out of a generator, you have to have a fixed RPM, fixed speed, normally 3,250 RPMs under a load, will give you the proper voltage from the generator. If they had idle down or throttle down, it would just be a nightmare. It would cause all kinds of problems, not only for the vacuum recovery system, but the Beckett burner on here, the high efficiency 110 volt burner, 110, 115, 120, whatever you want to call it. It's all variable depending on the unit. So basically, that's really what it's powering. And kind of what happened, real brief history. They used to come with like 2,000 watt, 2,500 watt generators. When they went to the 3,000 watt to add the recycling, we lost about, back to, when I was with another company, we lost about 30,000 a year worth of replacement burner parts because we had ample voltage. That's the effects of low voltage. By it being just borderline back in the day, it caused more problems. But because it's an oversized generator, by far it's actually a better machine too, with less downtime or issues. So there's some major kudos for what they built here, and it was pretty nice done. Now, you want to see, you come around this side here, we'll get through this. Real brief, they do have double carbon filters on here because it is actually emissions, carbon emissions and everything qualified. This is an 18-gallon gas tank, so it actually has 2 carbon filters. It's a sealed tank, so it doesn't vent out like they used to. That also could be issues in service or tech if something happens, that they know that it is a sealed vacuum system on there, the fuel system. The diesel fuel has a Raycor fuel filter, which is a fuel filter and oil water separator. So that's also a deluxe version. The Beckett burner, basically you need spark fuel and air to get fire, and that's what this is doing for you. You've got a blower fan that actually produces the airflow, with air band adjustments to control that. The igniter creates your spark, and then your fuel pump here is your fuel source. And then that's your fuel solenoid here, that operates off the thermostat, so that's where you can cut your fuel off. So it actually has, with Hydrotech, the pressure switch and the flow switch, cuts your electrical power to the unit on the igniter side, and then the thermostat is cutting off your fuel. So you got another double redundant system in there that allows to make sure that this thing can shut off when it needs to shut off. We've got 2 ceramic insulation blankets and heavy insulation. This is probably one of the most fuel efficient hot water units in the industry right now. Probably uses a third less fuel than other brands, which is amazing at 9 gallons a minute. I think we covered, other than you got your dipstick and your fill cap here on your engine oil, on your engine. Going back here, this unit, the vacuum motor is in here, 115 volt, that's what's plugged into the front control panel. Your transfer pump is a 21 gallon a minute centrifugal pump, not centrifugal, whatever. And that runs off the 12-volt battery. You've got a tank drain here, so the solid separation tank is a cone-shaped tank, so any solid is going to go to the bottom and you can drain out heavy solid. On the other side, the hose is actually tapped in above the bottom, so water is circulating, but it's not picking up all the muck and everything off the bottom. This is another nice redesign. It used to have the back motor here, which was a pain in the butt to lift and move, and the electrical wiring. You've got a 1,000 micron basket filter here. Going into that. Typically, you got 2 switches here, vacuum and transfer pump. You want them both on at the same time when you start the machine to make sure everything flows through and works properly. 50 micron string filter. It's a high capacity string filter. 20 micron string filter, and then it discharges through here back to our wastewater recovery tank, which has a 5 micron bag filter in it. So basically, we're going, in this case with the wheelie bin, we got 3 more 1,000 micron basket filters in the hopper. The hopper itself acts as a solid separation tank, so it actually does have a job and a purpose on that. It's about a 4-inch lip before, so that'll have all the solids and separation can lay in there. Then the water will run over that. From that point, with this vacuum being on, the vacuum line is going to come here, up to the top of the vacuum recycling system, and start that process going through the system and back to the tank. On the back here being the hopper, we have additional basket filter that most of us already know about. And that covers it, kind of the recycling in the hot water power washer. We can drop it down. We run a what's it called, dual grabber style lifter. We did incorporate on this is we put a switch here so it doesn't, you cannot open the jaws while it's over the top of the cleaning heads. So it protects the cleaning system and cleaning heads on there. Typically when you do set this up, there's a control panel here. We normally close that in on the units, then we open the lid. At this stage, we're probably at the demo section, so we can go ahead and just fire this thing up to show you how everything works.
You got your ball valve
yeah.
open. You want that ball valve open?
I got the bypass open. I just this bypass, but I got this one open. So I got the bypass valve open, but not back pressuring on the unit itself. You want to always choke the engine